I grew up in the town of Wolfville, and I used to come after school. My parents worked, and so I came after school with my grandmother down to the farm, and I would run wild down here through the apple trees, and I had kept a pony here, half wild horse, so I would ride through the woods. My grandmother had a big market garden and an apple farm, and she didn't really spray it or tend it. She just picked the apples. They had scabs on them, so be it. The garden was all was all cultivated using compost and animal manures, and no real synthetic fertilizers. My father always had a cider project, apple cider. So years ago, this was an apple farm, and my parents didn't farm it much for apples. My grandparents did, and it went through different periods of time where it was very profitable, and then it was not profitable at all. And so they turned to making apple cider with apples that they couldn't sell as fruit apples or whatnot. And that was a recipe for apple cider that got handed down from my grandfather to my father to me to Rachel. And this was a lot of times how the farm helped sustain itself during rough times. And the other unfortunate way that they would sustain themselves is selling building lots or selling land off. In the downturn of the apple industry would be, in the 50s and 60s, they sold land in the 60s to basically sustain their house and to provide them a bit of an income. So, back then the rules of agriculture weren't so strict, and they started to separate and sell some of their frontage, locally called their land adjacent to the roads. So they created building lots. So they sold off a bunch of building lots in the 60s until they ran out of those, and then they started to sell some of the major pieces of land that we've been able to get back. Allegedly, the year that they bought the farm, there was enough apples left on the trees. In about 3 months after they bought the farm, they picked the apples and sold them, and more than half paid for the farm. So that's how they started their farming here on this land, and then it very quickly went downhill from there. I just remember a lot of talk when I was a child. There seemed to be this shame, or there seemed to be this cloud over our family for having to sell this land to sustain the farm. It just seemed to be a lot of negative connotation about having to let our land go. And the particular farmer who purchased it was a conventional farmer, and used a lot of petrochemicals and used a lot of herbicide to try to grow his crops here. And we just started to see a lot of differences around with the trees and the biology that used to be really prevalent on the farm. I just remember having this unexplainable urge to make things right, and I didn't even know really how to do that or what it was all about. I never met my grandfather. My grandfather died about a month before I was born. And so I remember pulling into the graveyard where he's buried, and I remember having this weird conversation, and I don't know what type of headspace I was in. I won't go there, but I remember saying, I'm gonna finish what you started. I'm gonna get it all back. I'm gonna fix this issue, this problem. In the 60s, I think they sold our land, our family's land, for $100 an acre. And in the 90s, I paid $10,000 an acre to buy it back, not knowing what I would do with it, just knowing I had to have it back.
About 10 years ago, we decided to diversify the farm, the poultry farm. We had lots of land, and we had great interest for wine and drinking it ourselves, growing our palate and evolving.
And so here we were traveling the globe, going to Italy and Argentina and France, going to all the wine regions, eating at Michelin star restaurants and drinking all this fabulous wine. Meanwhile, at home, we're hearing about this influx of interest in our region as a wine growing area. We knew we wanted to do something here. We knew we were very interested in developing the farm further and doing some projects together. And so it all just kind of came together magically. Jocelyn started to study for her sommelier certification, and I became extremely interested in growing grapes as a farmer. That was very interesting to me. I was using land that our family had, and then there was this added element that really appealed to me, that grapevines are very long-lived and very permanent, and you put that amount of infrastructure, trellising, and care and heartfelt love into these vineyards, you know, it would be very difficult to have that land ever further developed for anything else. And when I started to think about, you know, grapevines and being able to commercialize a product on this piece of land, share this view and share our land and our family story with so many different people, it really appealed to us, and you know, and so we started to pursue it. There's often a dew in the morning, and so we'll wait for the sun to warm up and to actually dry the dew up, or the wind, for instance, will dry the grapes off. And when we're confident that the grapes are dry, then we can go and start our harvest. So it just depends on the weather, but generally it's as early as we can possibly get at them. We pick in small hand-held lugs, and we just use hand harvesting here. We don't use mechanized harvesting. Everything is harvested by hand. And this year we'll probably take in about 200 tons. 2 or 3 weeks out, you start hiring the extra hands. That's what we've been doing lately, is bringing some extra people on the farm to help us with harvest. Is very normal practice. And so yeah, it's kind of this energy that builds, and you know, it's really kind of neat. And then we pick up harvesters from all over. People will show up in buses and living in school buses. They'll come and camp in the vineyard. We meet all kinds of really cool people, from actors to writers to transient folks that are, you know, it's really a neat time. We meet a lot of really cool, eclectic people, and we try to build this community in the farm. We try to build this momentum and community, you know, so that we have a great spirit. It's hard work, long days, and once we get really into it up in October, it's pretty grueling. I certainly wanted a family member to succeed me, but when they always seemed to be opposed to it early on, and then when Rachel started and made the decision to join us, it changed the game. It was a game changer. We were, you know, very emotional. I remember when Rachel came and said she wanted to join the farm and do what we're doing and pitch in and you know, do this thing together. We were very honored and overwhelmed, all in the same. It was a real mix of emotions. In all kinds of reasons, we felt very proud as a family to be here, to be on this particular piece of land, and it's almost unexplainable. It's almost a pride, you know, that is, you know, now it's definitely part of our family. Like we're no longer nomads. We're farming in various different farms around the valley. We're here. This is our land, and this is our namesake, and this is our legacy. Future.
Don't forget me, Dad.
I won't forget you. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, sweetie.